Yo, what's up guys, Alf here, and today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth deck breakdown of a deck that I've recently used to hit rank 6 with on the arena ladder. And now unfortunately I did kind of tank my rank a bit trying out some brews that didn't end up working out, so I had a lot further to climb this week. But as you can see from the untapped screenshot, I'm currently 46-3 with the deck, so it's been performing incredibly well for me. And now before I get into it, there's going to be an MTG zone link down in the description. If you click on that, it'll have the deck list there that you can import into Arena if you want to try the deck out for yourself. And I'm also in the process of writing a full text article about this deck for MTG Zone Premium that will have more details, a full sideboard guide, how I changed the deck for best of one, and some tips and tricks to help you play the deck as well. So as soon as that's finished and up, I'll link that down in the description as well. But anyway, with that all out of the way, this is my red-black Braids Anvil deck in Alchemy. So this is a sacrifice deck, and the big advantage of playing this deck is it has incredibly good reach in the late game, which means that it's very good at dealing direct damage to the opponent. So even against decks with bigger creatures, or decks where we struggle to attack, we're typically going to win the long game unless they have a lot of ways to gain life, because we have so many ways to just deal direct damage to the opponent. So it's always very risky for the opponent to go to a low life total against us. So as the name suggests, this deck is largely built around this card, Oni-Cult Anvil, 2-mana artifact, and whenever one or more artifacts we control leave the battlefield during our turn, we create a 1/1 token. This only triggers once each turn, and then we can tap it and sacrifice an artifact to drain the opponent for 1. So this is incredibly good in basically every matchup because it produces a steady stream of tokens, which against aggressive decks we can use to block, and then we can, sacrifice the tokens because they're artifacts to the anvil in response to drain the opponent for 1. Against the slower controlling decks, we can just attack the opponent with our tokens that we create each turn. And even against decks where we can't attack through, we can just sacrifice them to the anvil every single turn to just consistently deal damage to the opponent while buffering our life total at the same time. So Anvil, very central to the deck. One of the other most important cards in the deck is Sanguine Brushstroke. This is a 3-mana enchantment. And when it enters the battlefield, we create a blood token and conjure a card named Blood Artist, which we can see on the right here. And then whenever we sacrifice a blood token, each opponent loses 1 life. So the Blood Artist part of this card is incredibly powerful. Another way that we can deal so much damage to the opponent directly is off Blood Artist, which drains the opponent for 1 whenever any creature dies, whether that's ours or our opponent's. So if the opponent isn't able to kill Blood Artist, and we're trading creatures off in combat, or we're killing the opponent's creatures with removal spells, Blood Artist is going to deal a ton of direct damage to the opponent, whilst also buffering our life total as well. And then we also get to deal, the opponent loses 1 life every time we sacrifice a blood token, which is another way we can deal a bunch of direct damage to the opponent. Now typically if you just have 1 Sanguine Brushstroke on the battlefield, it's going to get in for a bit of chip damage, but if you can stack multiples, even if the opponent does kill Blood Artist, which they're typically incentivized to because it deals a lot of damage, Brushstroke can deal a bunch of damage because we have so many other ways to create blood tokens as well. We have Bloodtithe Harvester, Blood Fountain, and Voldaren Epicure, which will create blood tokens. So another way that you can just kill the opponent is getting 1 or 2 Brushstrokes out and then just sacrificing all of your blood tokens to drain the opponent out that way as well. So Sanguine Brushstroke, the Blood Artist part is incredibly powerful, and if the opponent doesn't have an early removal spell for Blood Artist, it's going to get in for a ton of damage. But then we also get the upside of dealing the opponent losing 1 life each time we sacrifice a blood token as well, which is really important. So we'll have a look at the other blood token generators now, starting off with Blood Fountain. So this is a 1-mana artifact, and when it enters the battlefield we create a blood token, and then we can pay for, tap it, and sacrifice a Blood Fountain to return up to 2 target creatures from our graveyard to our hand. So typically this spot has been used by Experimental Synthesizer in the past, which I think is a good card in this sort of deck, but I'm not as high on it. First of all, because this isn't great as an Anvil enabler. You never really want to play this card before turn 2 or 3 because you're unlikely, if you cast this on turn 1 or 2, you're not going to be able to cast what you exile a lot of the time. And also it doesn't work very well with Braids, which is a new addition to the deck. So I'm not as high on Synthesizer because I'm running Braids, but if you wanted to run this as more of a kind of a mid-game card advantage engine, you could. But the reason why I prefer Blood Fountain in this particular build is, first of all, it just enables Anvil on turn 2. One of the other advantages of Sanguine Brushstroke, which I didn't say, is that because it creates a blood token, it enables Anvil immediately. So a common curve out with Brushstroke that you can do is turn 2 Anvil, turn 3 Brushstroke, sacrifice the blood token to the Anvil to start the token train going. But Blood Fountain on turn 1 into Anvil on turn 2 just enables you to get Anvil online. The fact it creates 2 artifacts because it has the Blood Fountain itself and the blood token means that we can also sacrifice the Blood Fountain later in the game, and the fact that we can get creatures back from the graveyard is really huge as well, especially with Bloodtithe Harvester and Braids Arisen Nightmare, which are both cards that we like getting back. We also have Shieldred in the sideboard, which is an incredibly powerful card in a certain matchup, so being able to get that back with Blood Fountain is also really nice. Now, it can be difficult to know which of these we want to sacrifice first, because if we do have Blood Fountain turn 1 into Anvil on turn 2, sometimes you want to sack the Blood Token, sometimes you want to sack the Blood Fountain, and that largely depends on how good Bloodtithe Harvester is in the matchup. So Blood Tithe Harvester, while we're talking about it, might as well go over it. It's 2 mana 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, you create a blood token, and then you can tap it and sacrifice Blood Tithe Harvester to give target creature -X/-X until end of turn, where X is twice the number of blood tokens you control. Activate only as a sorcery. So this is incredibly powerful because it works as removal, basically. So the main reason that you would want to sacrifice the Blood Fountain and hold on to the blood token is if you have Blood Tithe Harvester, or if the opponent is playing bigger creatures and you want to have more blood tokens available for when you play the Blood Tithe Harvester to be able to kill a bigger creature like a Shieldred, for example. So if you're up against a deck where you think having more blood tokens for Blood Tithe Harvester is better, it's typically better to sacrifice the Blood Fountain first. But in most other situations, I typically prefer sacrificing the blood token because the Blood Fountain can be useful later in the game to rebuy Braids, Blood Tithe Harvester, or Voldaren Epicure. Saving the blood token for Sanguine Brushstroke later in the game isn't really that relevant because that's only going to amount to 1 life loss later in the game. But if you do think Blood Tithe Harvester is going to be more important to have blood tokens, it's typically better to sack the Fountain first. Then we've got Voldaren Epicure, 1 mana 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, deal 1 damage to the opponent and create a blood token. So again, you know, just extra chip damage is always going to be useful. And the fact it creates a blood token is great. Again, enabling Anvil, you know, gets in for more chip damage off the back of Brushstroke. And we also have Deadly Dispute and Braids that I'm going to get to in a second, which are more payoffs for creating the blood tokens. And also the fact it's a creature itself, you know, great at stabilising against the aggressive decks because it's an early blocker, and also just getting in for damage in the early game. You know, against the slower decks, every point of damage that you can get in for through combat is great because that means that it's then easier for us to finish off the opponent with direct damage before they get more of a chance to stabilise. Then in terms of the removal, we've got Voltage Surge and Deadly Dispute in the deck. Now not Deadly Dispute, Infernal Grasp. So Voltage Surge is probably the better of the two. 1 mana instant. Deal 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and then you can sacrifice an artifact to deal 4 instead. Now, if it wasn't for Shieldred, I would absolutely be running 4 Voltage Surge in the main deck. So I'm running a 2/2 split in the main and a 2/2 split in the side. Voltage Surge is just great because it's 1 mana, and it's also a sacrifice outlet for our blood tokens and treasure tokens as well. And, you know, we can sacrifice Blood Fountain to it. We could sacrifice Oni-Cult Anvil if we're really in a pinch as well. But Voltage Surge, since it's just 1 mana, and it doesn't lose us 2 life like Infernal Grasp does, this is generally the much more efficient of the two. But the reason that I'm running Infernal Grasp in the main deck is because of Shieldred. So Shieldred is a card that is very difficult for us to beat game 1 unless we have Infernal Grasp or Blood Tithe Harvester with 3 blood tokens. And because this will not only make us lose 2 life every time we draw a card, and we do have multiple ways to draw cards off Fable, Braids and Dispute, but the big problem with Shieldred is every time the opponent draws a card, they gain 2 life, which is huge. You know, the whole game plan of this deck is just dealing direct damage to the opponent, so if they're able to gain 2 life every time they draw a card, that is going to undo a lot of the pressure that we're applying to the opponent's direct life total. Now, we're not always just relying on draining the opponent out. This deck is very good at grinding into the mid to late game as well, so even if the opponent does have a lot of incidental life gain, you can often position yourself where we just outgrind the opponent and then finish them off anyway. But because some decks are running Shieldred in the main deck, I feel like you have to be running at least 2 Infernal Grasp in the main as an answer to it. Like I said, we also do have Blood Tithe Harvester, but we need it to untap and have 3 blood tokens in play in order to kill Shieldred, or we'd have to use Blood Tithe Harvester and Voltage Surge together, which is always, you know, pretty bad exchange for us. So I think you do have to be running at least 2 Infernal Grasp in the main deck as a clean answer to Shieldred. The reason I'm not running 4 Infernal Grasp in the main deck, I did test that briefly, but it makes you a lot weaker to the aggressive decks like Mono Red. You know, it is a big issue having to wait until you have 2 mana to start killing stuff, and you lose 2 life as well. So I feel because of Shieldred, you do need to be running at least 2, but I don't like going any higher because it makes your aggressive matchups a lot worse. And typically most decks that are main decking Shieldred are running it in low numbers, usually 1 or 2. And so I don't think it's worth making your mono red matchup significantly worse just on the off chance that the opponent's going to draw a Shieldred. And even when they do, we can often prepare ourselves by, you know, we have a lot of ways to dig through the deck to draw Infernal Grasp, and we can also just set up Blood Tithe Harvester as a way to kill it. So I like the 2-2 split. If Shieldred in the main deck becomes much more popular, you might have to go to 4 Infernal Grasp instead, but as things stand, I like the 2-2 split here. And then next up we'll have a look at the card advantage engine. So we've got 4 copies of Deadly Dispute, 2 mana instant, and as an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature, and then we draw 2 and create a treasure token. So this is really strong as it gives us payoffs for creating all the blood tokens and treasure tokens that we're going to create, keeps the cards flowing, helps us hit land drops, is great at triggering Anvil as well. If we have a blood token out, we don't always have to sacrifice the artifacts to Anvil. As long as the artifacts die during our turn, we get the token. So, we could sacrifice a blood token to the Deadly Dispute to get the Anvil token, draw 2 and create a treasure. The fact it ramps is really nice as well because we often want to cast multiple spells on a turn. We have tons of ways to keep drawing cards, so oftentimes mana is a bit of a choke point, so the additional treasures is nice. It's also nice to sacrifice to stuff like Voltage Surge as well. And we also have Invoke Despair and Shieldred in the sideboard, which are kind of expensive cards, so Deadly Dispute allowing us to ramp into these is also really nice as well. Then we've got Braids Arisen Nightmare. So this is from the latest set, and I think this is such a great addition to the deck as a card advantage engine. So this is a 3-mana 3/3, and at the beginning of your end step you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it, and for each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. So the real strength of this card is a bit weaker in the mirror match, but the main strength of Braids in this deck against any other decks that aren't running a lot of, say cards that produce blood tokens is, say we go like Bloodtithe Harvester on turn 2 and we don't need to activate it to kill a creature, we can then just play Braids on turn 3, sacrifice the blood token, and against most decks the opponent isn't going to have an artifact in play, so we're just going to draw a card and they lose 2 life, which is ideal. If the opponent doesn't kill this, we can just sacrifice our artifacts that we produce off the blood token generators, off stuff like Deadly Dispute, and we basically just force them to give us the card draw and lose 2 life because most decks aren't going to have artifacts in play. On certain board states you can also sacrifice creatures as well, especially if you have a Blood Artist in play. That's a great way that we can trigger the Blood Artist and put the opponent in an awkward spot where they either have to sacrifice their own creatures, which typically they're not keen to do, or give us the card draw and lose 2 life. And like I said, the main goal of this deck is to deal a bunch of direct damage to the opponent, so the fact that this loses them 2 life and we can just generate card advantage every turn off this is really huge. The fact it's legendary is the main reason I'm not running 4 copies. If it wasn't legendary, I think I would be running 4 copies of this, but either way, it's just an incredibly powerful card at just producing card advantage every single turn, and is kind of a must-kill threat for the opponent because of that. Another nice interaction that's worth noting is that it triggers Anvil because it's still done during our turn. So say we haven't triggered Anvil for the turn, we can just play Braids, and then during our end step we can sacrifice something like a blood token or a treasure token, draw us a card and force the opponent to lose 2 life, and then we also get the 1/1 token off Anvil because the end step is still during our turn. Additionally, we also can sacrifice creatures to Chapter 3 of Fable of the Mirror Breaker before they go away. Now you might have to change the order of the triggers, but for me it's always ordered it correctly, where the Braids will trigger before the Reflection triggers to sacrifice the creature. So say, I'll get to Fable in a second, but say we copy like a Voldaran Epicure with it, we can then sacrifice the Epicure during our end step to either force the opponent to sacrifice their creature or draw us a card and lose 2 life before we would have to sacrifice it to the Reflection, if that makes sense. So Braids, great addition to the deck because it's just consistent card advantage and deals direct damage to the opponent as well, which is exactly what this deck wants to be doing. And then finally we've got 4 copies of Fable of the Mirror Breaker, 3 mana enchantment, and all 3 modes on this are really solid. So create a 2/2 Goblin Shaman token with, whenever this attacks, create a treasure token. So this is great because similar to Deadly Dispute, it allows us to ramp, which is really good at just giving us extra mana. The treasure token is very good for, sacking to Braids, sacking to Oni-Cult Anvil when we don't need the ramp as well. Then Chapter 2, you may discard up to 2 cards, and if you do, draw that many cards. So this is great at just cycling through the deck, making sure that we keep hitting land drops, making sure that we don't get flooded out. Just great at cycling through our deck to hit what we need. And then Chapter 3, transforms into Reflection of Kikijiki. So it's a 2/2 enchantment creature, and we can pay 1 and tap it to create a token that's a copy of another target non-legendary creature we control, except it has haste. And the really strong thing about Reflection of Kikijiki in this deck is copying Bloodtithe Harvester is a really sick endgame where we can just basically kill one of our opponent's creatures for free every single turn. Now Fable, a lot of the Anvil decks weren't running Fable previously, but I really like Fable in this deck because first of all it allows us to ramp, and post sideboard against a lot of decks we do want to be ramping into Invoke Despair or Shieldred. So Invoke Despair as a sideboard plan becomes a lot worse when we don't have Fable in the deck as a way to ramp into it. The card selection it provides off the second chapter is just great at ensuring we don't get in situations where we don't have great card advantage. Say we have a Braids as our main way to grind into the mid to late game. If the opponent has a removal spell for it straight away, that can kind of shut that off. Whereas Fable is very difficult to interact with favourably. Unless they have enchantment removal immediately, we're always going to get chapter 2, so it's kind of a guaranteed way to smooth our draws out. And then Reflection plus Bloodtithe Harvester is just a really, really strong end game against a lot of the creature decks that's very difficult for them to beat as well. So I really, really like Fable in this deck. Plus, not to mention, the treasure token off the 2/2 is always going to be helpful either to ramp or to give us stuff to sacrifice to Anvil or Braids as well. So I did try some builds that weren't running Fable and I just immediately missed it. And Invoke Despair is such an important card against the Esper decks as well that I feel like you need to be running Fable as a way to ramp into that earlier in the game as well. And then lastly, we've got a single copy of Meathook Massacre. So this is legendary enchantment, costs X and black, and when it enters the battlefield, each creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, and whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. So I felt like I wanted to have a single copy of Meathook in the main deck, just as a way to sweep the board against the faster decks. This is very good against mono white and mono red aggro, but even outside of that, the fact that you drain the opponent whenever your creatures dies is very powerful, and you can often end up in board states with Blood Artist where you can just Meathook your whole board and just drain the opponent out between the Blood Artist drain triggers and the damage that Meathook does as well. Now, one difference between the gameplay that you're about to see and this current deck list is I originally had one Shieldred in the main, but I ended up swapping that out for Meathook Massacre because I think Shieldred is an incredibly powerful card in certain matchups, but it's kind of bad against decks that have a lot of single target removal. There are some grindy decks in the format where you just play Shieldred and they kill it immediately, which is pretty bad. Whereas I really like having it in the sideboard for matchups that typically don't have great removal as ways to kill it. And Meathook in the main is just nice as a one-of. Typically it's not a card you're thrilled to draw multiple, so I like running a single copy in the main deck, and then we have a couple more in the sideboard for matchups where it's relevant as well. And then onto the mana base, we've got 24 lands in the deck, which has felt like a good amount to me. Takenuma and Sokenzan are really nice utility lands. Takenuma can help us buy back Bloodtithe Harvester, Braids, and Shieldred once we bring that in. Sokenzan is actually really nice in this deck because the 2/1/1 tokens, if we have Blood Artist in play, they'll drain the opponent for 1 when they die. We can just get in for extra damage against opponents that have either tapped their creatures out or don't have any creatures in play, so we can just get in for extra damage with these, and they're just sacrifice fodder for stuff like Deadly Dispute and Braids as well. Then we've got all of the good black-red dual lands, which aren't that many in Alchemy right now because of rotation. Haunted Ridge and Sulphur Springs are both great. You do need to be careful sequencing your lands because against certain decks life loss does matter, and the auto tapper can be weird with Sulphur Springs, so you often want to manually tap this for colourless if you want to use it for colourless. And we've also got Forsaken Crossroads, which I've been really impressed with this card. It's just great as colour fixing for whatever colours you need, and also just provides a scry when we don't need mana that turn as well. So I've been really liking the mana base. So that's the main deck. I've really liked this setup. I've been tweaking a lot of the numbers, and this definitely feels like the best 60 card main deck. Now onto the sideboard. Like I said, we've got a 2-2 split of Voltage Surge and Infernal Grasp in the sideboard. Typically we'll bring both of these in against the aggressive decks like Mono Red or Gruul, for example. But it's very important that we have 4 Infernal Grasp between the main and the sideboard to deal with Shieldred decks. There are a lot of decks that, even if they don't main deck Shieldred, will be sideboarding it in against you, and Infernal Grasp is really important as a way to kill that. And for that reason, it's typically better to save your Infernal Grasps if you only have 1 for Shieldred. Obviously, if you're in a spot where you need to kill something, then fire it off, but for the most part, it is very important to save Infernal Grasp for Shieldred. Speaking of Shieldred, we also have it in our sideboard here. So we've got 3 copies of it, and it's a 4-mana 4/5 with Death Touch. Whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. So first of all, this is really good against the red-based aggressive decks like Mono Red and Gruul, because they're not going to have cards to be able to kill this. Unless they're sideboarding something specific like Brittle Blast, most of their removal is only going to be dealing 3 or 4 damage. And if this sticks on the battlefield, it's just great at blocking, stonewalling their attacks. And then if you get to untap with it, it just starts gaining you a ton of life and just completely stabilizes you against the aggressive decks. It's also very important in the mirror match as well. Against the other red-black Anvil decks, it's all about, kind of about card advantage, but also about draining your opponent out. And if you're the player with the Shieldred in play and your opponent doesn't have one, you're just going to be winning that game. the mirror match, if you can't kill the opponent's Shieldred, they're just going to be swinging the life total race so far in their favour. So we really want it for the aggressive decks and for the mirror match as well. And if there are any other decks that are, you know, if you think the opponent's not going to have good enough removal to kill this, you know, if they're not running black for the most part, Shieldred is just typically good against them. Like I said, the main reason I don't like it in the main deck is because there are a decent number of black interactive decks that will just be able to kill Shieldred on sight. But on the flip side, there are also a lot of aggressive, mainly the decks that are relying on red-based removal to interact with, that really struggle to deal with Shieldred, so really important in those matchups. Then we've got 2 copies of Nyxlis, 3 mana Planeswalker with Casualty, so you can put 2 copies of it into play. +1, each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card, and if you control a demon or devil, you gain 2 life. -2, create a 1/1 devil creature token with when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. And then the ultimate, -7, target player draws 7 cards and loses 7 lives. So this is mainly here for the mirror match and for control. So in the mirror match, generally you tend to struggle to attack the opponent cleanly because of cards like Oni-Cult Anvil generating a steady stream of tokens. So in the mirror match, it's actually quite difficult for the opponent to attack down Nyxlis. And this, you know, similar to Shieldred, this just swings the life total race, because if you -2 to create the 1/1 red devil token, every +1, the opponent will be losing 2 life and you'll be gaining 2 life, which is really huge. So it just guarantees, basically, while you have an Nyxlis in play, that you're not going to get drained out by the opponent. So they're going to have to outcard advantage you at that point. So Nyxlis, along with Shieldred, just ensures that the opponent can't drain you out in the mirror match. And then against control, it's just a card that is very hard for the opponent to interact with favourably, especially with counter spells. You know, counter spells can be powerful against us if they have the cheap ones, you know, shutting off stuff like Anvil and Brushstroke, but if the opponent is running stuff like Spell Pierce or Undersimplify, it's very difficult for them to trade favourably with Nyxlis, because if we casualty it, they can only counter 1 copy unless they use 2 counter spells on it, and then once it's in play, it's very difficult for them to interact with, because most of the control decks, you know, they can bring in sweepers like Meathook Massacre or Temporary Lockdown against us, or even Farewell, but it's going to be very difficult for them to kill Nyxlis. You know, Farewell specifically is a very good card against us, and a lot of the mid-range decks, if they're running the slower versions of Esper, for example, could be boarding in Farewell against us. So even against these slower mid-range decks, I like bringing in Nyxlis there as well, because it's a threat that survives Farewell and is just constantly going to be applying pressure to the opponent's life total. Then we've got 4 copies of Invoke Despair, so this is a 5 mana sorcery. Target opponent sacrifices a creature. If they can't, they lose 2 life and you draw a card, and then repeat this process for an enchantment and a Planeswalker. So this is here, first of all, for any decks that are running problematic enchantments. If the opponent's running Cabaretti Revels or Leyline Binding or Temporary Lockdown, this is great to bring in. But this is mainly here for the Esper matchup, because they tend to run a lot of cards that are difficult to interact with favourably with single target removal, stuff like Lae'zel and Shieldred, and, you know, amongst other cards. Sometimes they bring in Planeswalker against you as well, like Tasha or Liliana. So Invoke Despair is really solid against the Esper decks as a way to kill their harder to kill threats like Lae'zel. They'll also sometimes bring in Temporary Lockdown against you and Leyline Binding, so this is great at just killing enchantments, killing Planeswalkers in matchups where they bring it in. And in general, Esper are slower than you. They'll typically pivot to a more controlling role, so Invoke Despair is just a way for us to kill their big threats and just continuously produce card advantage. And the fact that the opponent loses 2 life as well off this just helps us deal even more damage against them. And then finally, we've got 2 more copies of Meathook Massacre. So again, this is mainly here for the aggressive decks that are going wide against us. Mono white, mono red, typically for the most part, but just any aggressive deck where they're trying to go wide against us. You know, very easy way for us to sweep their board, and once it's in play, we just deal extra damage to the opponent off the losing 1 life whenever our creatures die as well. So anyway, that's the deck. I've been tweaking this deck a lot, and I'm really happy with how this 75 card deck ended up overall. I think it has really good tools to fight against basically every single deck in the format. It is kind of difficult to play if you're new to it, but it's also really, really fun to figure out, and I've been having a ton of fun playing the deck as well. So if you've got any questions about the deck at all, drop me a comment below. Next up, I've got some gameplay. I've only got 4 matches this time because one of the matches I wanted to highlight was really good, and it was over half an hour. So I've got 4 matches with the deck so you guys can see it in action, and so I hope you enjoy the gameplay. Big up. Okay, sweet, here we go. Okay, so we're going first here, and I mean, this hand obviously isn't great. We do have a lot of ways to loot, but the fact we don't have an untapped red on turn 1 makes that probably too slow and just pretty low impact. This hand isn't great either. We have better card quality
It is quite slow, but I think on a 6 on the play we can probably afford to keep this, because even if we don't draw anything to play on turn 2, just playing Fable on turn 3 is decent, because we can start filtering away, start digging for more stuff. And typically when you're playing this deck as well, even though you've got Braids and Sanguine Brushstroke that are both pretty good plays to play on turn 3. Oh, Bloodtithe Harvest is a great draw here. So we did hit a turn 2 play, which is great. But yeah, like I was saying, I think Fable is almost always the card that you want to play on turn 3, because it allows you to start ramping quicker, and it also allows you to flip to Reflection quicker, which then allows you to start copying stuff like Bloodtithe Harvester even sooner. So typically, if you're not sure what to play on turn 3, you almost always want to go for Fable. Pilfer from the opponent here, interesting. So I imagine we're losing the Fable here. Thankfully we still have Braids, which is pretty decent. You know, we can sacrifice the blood token to start drawing here, which is nice. Okay, Voltage Surge is decent, gives us a bit of removal. Now, the only thing here is that by sacking this blood token, it does mean that Bloodtithe Harvester can't be used as a removal spell, but I think it's worth doing for sure. You know, cashing in a blood token for a card and dealing 2 damage is pretty sick here, so... Wow, Pilfer again. So we do lose the Voltage Surge, which is a bit annoying. So it looks like opponents on mono black, I'd imagine. Unless they're playing Rakdos and they just haven't drawn a red land yet. So we'll get in here. Even though we would like to keep the Bloodtithe Harvester around for damage, I don't want to not use our mana, and we don't have great targets to sack to Braids here, so I'm pretty happy to sack it to the Dispute. Provides a treasure token for us to sack to Braids. And we draw Epicure and Shieldred, which is pretty nice here. Now, out of the 2, I think I'm happiest sacrificing the treasure token here, because we already have enough mana, and we probably want to use, you know, we could use this blood token to cycle away one of these lands, because we are flooding out a little bit here. Shieldred is great. Ah, okay. Opponent has a Shieldred as well, which is a bit annoying. We could sack the blood token now, but I think it's better off sacrificing it to Braids later. Interesting. So we could Deadly Dispute and Shieldred here, but then we're kind of forced to sack the treasure token to use it, which means that we then don't have great sack targets for our Braids here. So I think I prefer going Shieldred first, and then we can use the Deadly Dispute next turn and still have utility for the treasure token. So here I'm either thinking sack the Epicure or the blood token. I like sacking the blood token here, even though it does mean that if they kill the Epicure, we don't have a great target for the Dispute, but I don't think, you know, if they have removal, they're going to kill the Shieldred here, not the Epicure. And, okay, they do have a removal spell, which is a bit annoying, but I like getting the Shieldred into play straight away there, because it's going to start counteracting the life gain that they get. If they can start gaining life here, that's going to start putting the game a little bit out of reach for us. Brushstroke is huge here, because they're already down to 4, and so it's not going to be too difficult to force lethal through if we draw something good off the Dispute. So we'll use Dispute here, sacking the blood token, which will deal them 1 off the Brushstroke. Okay, sick. So I'm pretty sure that's lethal now, unless they have, you know, if they have a cut down, then actually no, even with cut down this should still be lethal, right? Because we attack with both the Braids and the Epicure. If they block the Braids, they take 1 from the Blood Artist, they'll take 1 from the Epicure. That'll put them down to 1, and then we can play the Epicure to deal them 1, and we could sack the blood token it generates to deal them another 1 off the Brushstroke as well, so yeah, nice. We got there even through Shieldred. Now, having our own Shieldred did help counteract 2 of the life gain they had there, and I'm really keen to bring in Grasp here because of Shieldred, but we didn't really get to see much of their deck other than that, so I'm not really sure what else we would want to bring in here. Like, I'm pretty sure they're going to have Liliana, so you could bring in Invoke Despair, but they have a lot of discard, so Invoke Despair seems like a bit of a liability. They also didn't seem to have too many creatures, so I could potentially see bringing Obnixilus in. Either way, I don't think Shieldred's that good here because they have a lot of single target removal. You know, they're playing mono black, so they're going to have access to a lot of single target removal. I'm not sure we really need Voltage Surge as much because it doesn't look like they have as many creatures. But again, we didn't really see much of their deck, so I don't want to bring in Obnixilus because they could have a decent number of creatures. We just didn't see that part of their deck, if that makes sense. So I don't want to over sideboard here, considering we didn't see too much of their deck. But we absolutely, if you think the opponent has Shieldred or they might have Shieldred into game 2, you have to bring in all, you know, you want to have 4 Infernal Grasp basically to kill that as quickly as possible. So this hand looks pretty nice, you know, even though we don't have an early way to trigger Dispute. Okay, I guess we do now. But either way, you know, just playing Fable on 3 and then potentially making a treasure off the attack to sack to Dispute is still pretty decent, I think. But now we've drawn the Harvester, that's great. You know, we can play Harvester on 2, Fable on 3, then we have Braids and Dispute as card advantage, so Looking pretty good start. Okay, they have Pilfer, so I'd imagine Fable goes here. You know, if they take the Harvester, then there's probably a creature that they want to protect, but yeah, okay. Oh, okay, Infernal Grasp is a nice draw here, because then now we have an answer to Shieldred, and unless I draw a second Grasp, I'm basically going to try and avoid killing anything else with this Infernal Grasp. I'm just going to try and hold it for Shieldred if I can. Okay, they have Underdog, so they did have some creatures, not really a surprise. So even though we could use the Harvester as a removal spell here, I think I like... I'm definitely going to sack the Blood Token to the Braids here. We want to start getting advantage off the Braids. We could have sacked the Harvester to kill the Underdog, but I think that's a pretty bad exchange because they can just blitz the Underdog later in the game. You know, if we draw more Blood Tokens... Oh wow, okay. Well, we'll just exile the Harvester to that. But yeah, if we draw more Blood Tokens, we could have potentially used the Harvester later in the game as removal. Okay, they attack. Well, we'll definitely not block here. Okay, another land isn't ideal, but we can cycle, channel the Sokenzan here, get in for 5, which is huge. You know, getting 5 points of damage out of nowhere is pretty huge. Then we can sack one of the tokens to the Braids here, see if they sack the Underdog in response. Okay, they don't, so we get to draw a card here, and now we have the token next turn that we could sack to Deadly Dispute. Oh wow, Shakedown Heavy. Okay, I'm very glad I didn't bring in Obnixilis here then, because it would have been pretty easy for them to attack it down. Although I guess with Shakedown Heavy we can force them to cancel the attack off its ability. So I doubt they're going to attack here, you know. This is a deck, you know, the Red-Black Anvil deck, they do attack. I was going to say, you really don't want to let it get in for free damage here, but I guess they don't know. I guess they think the Shakedown Heavy is going to be able to block. So we drew Blood Fountain, which is great here because it gives us a way to Voltage Surge. Even if we didn't draw the Blood Fountain there, we could have just sacked the token to Deadly Dispute to produce a treasure token, and then use that to sack to Voltage Surge to kill the Shakedown Heavy. But this way we get to keep the token around, which gets in for an extra point of damage, which is huge. You know, if you can get in for damage in combat, unless you're really on the back foot against an aggro deck, you really want to get in for damage wherever you can, and then it just makes draining them out to finish them off a lot easier. So we can scry with the Forsaken Crossroads, and then we can just sack the treasure. I think we have enough mana here, but we don't need to keep the treasure around for that. I'm going to set a stop during my upkeep here, just in case they play Shieldred. It's a bit annoying that Arena doesn't automatically set a stop for Shieldred, because if the opponent casts it and you don't have a stop, it's going to automatically pass to your draw step, and you'll instantly lose 2 life. Wow, Corrupt Court Official. So we have to discard a card here. I think we're happy to discard a land. We have enough mana, and all the cards in our hand are pretty good, so... Wasn't expecting that. I guess the opponent's... Looks like their deck's trying to leverage Liliana, just strip the opponent of their resources, but... This deck is very good at grinding through that. We have a lot of good engine cards. Okay, they attack in with the Underdog, which I'm kind of surprised to see, because they're already at such a low life total, but I guess they feel I have to race a little bit. So we're definitely going to lead on the Brushstroke here, I think, or... Yeah, I think we probably want to get Brushstroke into play, because then when we kill the opponent's creatures, we're going to start draining them, and they're already down to a pretty low life total here. So we could Brushstroke and then kill the Concealing Courtyards with the Voltage Surge, which seems pretty appealing. They'll lose a life off the Blood Artist, and an additional life off the Blood Token that we sacrifice here. And then, you know, they're kind of forced to block the Braids here. They'll go down to 2, and then we can just sacrifice the token, which will force them to sack the Underdog, and then we'll just win with the Blood Artist trigger here. So, nice, we got there. Okay, so we're going first here, and yeah, this hand looks great. You know, we've got turn 2 Harvester, we can scry on turn 1 to try and hit our 3rd land, hopefully hit our 3rd land for Fable on turn 3. So, okay, even though Brushstroke is decent, we're definitely going to scry away anything that isn't a land. We really want to play Fable on curve here if we can. And even though Brushstroke is a nice card to play on 3, I think you almost always want to prioritise playing Fable on turn 3 if you have the option, because
It just helps you ramp quicker, and hitting the reflection mode as quickly as possible is really nice because you can start copying Harvesters and Epicures, so Fable, if you can play on turn 3, is usually the best option. Okay, so opponents on white-black, and they cut down the Blood Tithe Harvester, which is fine, I think. We're definitely going to run out of the Fable here, and then we can start, you know, hopefully digging towards our 4th land. We've already got a lot of decent cards in hand, so... Okay, they cut down the token, which does shut us off from ramping a bit, which is a bit annoying, but... Still got really good cards in hand, so I like our position here. So interesting, opponents on white-black. I was going to say they could be on Esper, but we haven't seen blue yet, but the fact they're playing Scour Barons, and the fact they're running this LES Ilkor, whatever it's called, that's not a very common card in Esper, so they might be just running white-black, I'm not really sure. I think, you know, Brushstroke is good here, but I think I like going for Braids, because, you know, the only removal spell they could have that could kill it is Fragment Reality, which isn't very common right now. So I like getting Braids into play, and then we're almost guaranteed to get an activation. Okay, opponent's playing Braids as well, so it looks like they're not on Esper. I imagine they're just playing a white-black sacrifice variant, which is interesting. I've not seen a deck like this before. Okay, they missed their 4th land, which is pretty bad, and they don't really have good Braids activations here. I don't imagine they'll want to sacrifice the LES Ilkor, because it's going to be gaining them life. So we flip the Fable here, and now we can play Brushstroke and Anvil, which is pretty sick. So we get the Blood Artist and the Blood Token. We can just play the Anvil, and then we can go to our end step, and we can sacrifice the Blood Token to Braids, which will trigger both the Brushstroke and the Anvil. We'll get a token and deal them 1 damage, which is pretty nice. And now we're in a pretty sick spot. We can start copying Blood Artist with Reflection here, which is decent. Okay, they do have a Brushstroke of their own, so they're definitely on a sacrifice variant. They have been missing lands, though, which is pretty rough for them. So, like, the card we would love to draw here is Blood Tithe Harvester, because in these sacrifice mirrors, killing the opponent's Blood Artist is really nice. Okay, they sacrifice a Blood Token. We're definitely just going to sacrifice our Anvil token, because we already have Epicure in hand as a way to produce more artifacts to get another token next turn. So we'll lead on the Epicure here, and then I think we'll probably want to Deadly Dispute the Blood Token, which will trigger the Anvil and deal them 1 damage, and see what we draw here. Oh wow, we hit Blood Tithe Harvester and Shieldred. Okay, that's ideal, because now we can go Blood Tithe Harvester here, copy it with the Reflection, and kill their Blood Artist. And killing the opponent's Blood Artist while you still have one in play is really huge in these sorts of mirrors. If you're in a sacrifice mirror and you're the player with the Blood Artist and the opponent doesn't have one, you're typically going to win the long game, because it's just going to deal, you know, as you're trading creatures off in combat, as you're sacrificing creatures to Anvil, you're going to be just draining the opponent out, and you're going to be winning the life race, I guess. So I don't think we have good attacks here. We want to keep the Braids around, and I think I'm going to sacrifice the Anvil token here while we have Blood Artist in play. If the opponent has a removal spell, they're pretty incentivized to kill the Blood Artist, and I want to keep both Blood tokens in play in case they play Shieldred, because then we can copy Blood Tithe Harvester, produce our 3rd Blood token, and then we have a way to kill Shieldred. Whereas if we sack a Blood token to the Braids, we don't have a way to kill it. Okay, opponent got stuck on 3 lands there, which kind of sucks for them, but... So, sacrifice mirror here. We definitely want the Obnixiluses in. I wish I had more Shieldred, because that's really solid in this sort of matchup. We definitely want Grasp, because I imagine the opponent's either going to be main decking or sideboarding Shieldred against us. I like Voltage Surge here, because we need a way to kill Blood Artist, and they seem to be playing more creatures anyway, like the LESL Core and the Braids are both cards that we want to be able to kill. Just debating whether we want to bring in Meathook as well here. You know, Meathook is very good against the red-black variants, because you know, it just gets you back in the game if you're behind on tempo. Since the opponent's not playing Anvil, you know, we only saw white-black. They could be Mardu, I guess, but since we only saw white-black, maybe Meathook's not as good, but I think it should still be good, you know, especially going second. It's a way for us to recover a bit of tempo, and it's good, just general extra way to deal more damage to the opponent. So I think we'll run it back like that. But yeah, I think out of the two, like, I've not seen a white-black sacrifice deck before, but I'm just trying to think what other cards in white would incentivize you to play it over red-black. So this hand's pretty decent. We've got early interaction. We've got Anvil into Brushstroke into Obnix, which sounds really good here. So we'll definitely play this on red. Just debating whether we want to untap or scry here. Like, we could untap to hold up Voltage Surge for for a creature, but the value on the scry is pretty nice here. Actually, thinking about it, I probably should have left that untapped. Yeah, I was going to say specifically for this card. Yeah, okay, that was a big mistake on my part then. I want to kill that before they start gaining life off it. But had we had that Forsaken Crossroads untapped, we could have killed that and then played Anvil this turn into Brushstroke next turn, which is a lot better. So, oh wow, I near the second one. That kind of sucks. So yeah, I definitely misplayed there. I should have had the Forsaken Crossroads untapped so we could kill their 2-drop and then Anvil into Brushstroke, because we could have had Anvil in play and have already triggered it by now if we'd left it untapped. Oh well, they have Shieldred. Okay, that's pretty scary. So they attack here. I mean, we definitely want to get Blood Tithe Harvester into play here, because if we can hit another Blood Token generator, that provides us with a way to kill the Shieldred here. But it does kind of put us in an awkward spot here where we definitely want to play Anvil, and we really want to produce a token to be able to chump block the Shieldred here, because they're going to attack with it for sure next turn. And we definitely don't want to block with the Harvester, but we also don't want to sacrifice the Blood Tokens, because if we hit another creature to create a Blood Token, we want to have 3 so that we can kill the Shieldred with the Harvester. So I think we just have to sacrifice Anvil to its own ability, which kind of sucks, but... Oh, wow. Hold on, let me just reread this. Okay, that's pretty bad. So, even if we do kill the Shieldred now, they'll get a 2/2 copy of it. So we really need to draw another way to produce a Blood Token here. Oh, perfect. Okay, that is the perfect draw. Interesting. So, we've got 2 options here. We can either kill the Ratadrabic, however you say that, and then kill the Shieldred next turn with the Harvester, or we can kill the Shieldred now and hope to draw our 5th land for the Meathook Massacre. I think I prefer killing the Ratadrabic here, because if we don't draw our 5th land on curve, we're in real trouble. But if they have a removal spell for the Harvester here, we're in really big trouble. So maybe we should have killed the Shieldred there. They'll get a 2/2 copy of it, and then whenever we hit our 5th land, we can just sweep the board. Oh. Okay. They have a second one. So I think we just have to hope to draw our 5th land here. Because if we can draw our 5th land, we can Blood Tithe Harvester to kill the Shieldred, and then Meathook Massacre for 3 and sweep the whole board. I guess we could Meathook for 2 either way, but they get to keep the Ratadrabic otherwise. We did draw our 5th land, which is obviously ideal here. So we definitely want to kill the Shieldred. They'll get a 2/2 copy, and then we can just Meathook. And the reason I didn't block last turn is because we're going to get a ton of life gain off the Meathook now. Maybe we should have chumped with the Blood Artist in case we didn't draw our 5th land, but it worked out fine. We're going to be gaining 4 life here off the Meathook, so we get a bunch of Blood Artist triggers. So yeah, thinking back on it last turn, maybe it was risky killing the Ratadrabic instead of the Shieldred, because we're probably going to draw our 5th land eventually, and if the opponent did have a removal spell for the Harvester, we're just kind of screwed at that point, but it's close. I think there's definitely arguments to both sides. Okay, they played Jadar, which is interesting. So we can just go Anvil here. We can sacrifice one of the Blood Tokens to the Anvil to create a 1/1, and then we can Casualty in Obnixilis, and we're definitely going to minus on the first copy so that any future pluses we do will be gaining us a life, because we're definitely behind on the life race at the moment. You know, we're down at 8 and they're at 17, so we're going to minus here. And the nice thing about minusing is that we can block and kill the Jadar. You know, if they attack, I assume they attack down the Obnixilis. I'm going to hold on to this Sokenzan to channel, by the way. I think we've got enough lands already. Depopulate's interesting. I guess they're running a lot of multicolored cards. Okay, they have Braids. So I assume they attack down Obnixilis here. Wow, they're attacking us. Okay, interesting. So, just trying to think what we want to block here, because they're going to be able to sacrifice one of their creatures to Braids. I guess they lose the Decayed token either way here. And I think we could have killed the Jadar there, but I like killing the Elias Elcor just because it's going to be swinging the life race even further in their favour. I guess Maybe we should have killed Jadar there though, because they're going to be able to get free Braids activations otherwise. So I think Deadly Dispute's a nice draw here because we can minus the Obnixilus, which we'd probably want to do anyway so that we can gain life off the plus off the other Obnixilus. But now we can Deadly Dispute... well, I'm going to Deadly Dispute the Blood Token first here, but now we can block with this 1-1 and kill the Jadar. Oh, okay, Voltage Surge is a nice draw here. We could have Deadly Disputed the Devil Token and killed the Jadar straight away, but I kind of like, I want to have more stuff back to block because it looks like they're getting more aggressive attacking us directly. And if we can get to a situation where we keep the 1-1 around, that's really nice because then we start gaining more, we can continue to gain life off the Obnixilus plus here. Okay. Brushstroke. So I was going to kill the Braids with the Voltage Surge, but we might have to kill the Blood Artist instead now. Yeah, I think we'll probably have to. They are going to gain value off the Jadar plus Braids, but we can sacrifice, now we've got Anvil tokens, we can start sacrificing our Anvil creatures so that they don't draw cards. So I think killing the Blood Artist there is more important. Okay, they sacrifice a Blood Token instead of the Decay, so we'll just sacrifice one of our treasures instead here. And now the 1-1 that we created off the Obnixilus survived, so we can continue to gain life off the other Obnixilus plus here, which is pretty sick. Going to cycle away a land here to just hopefully draw something better. Wow, okay, Fable, that's gas. I was going to say, even if we didn't draw anything great, we still have Sokenzan that we can channel in here, but Fable is sick. Now we can start, next turn, even if we draw another land, we can just cycle them both away. Oh wow, okay, they attack Anuma, so they can get back Shieldred now, which is pretty scary. And we don't have a clean answer either, so... Oh wow, they get back the Ratadrabic, interesting. So I guess now... we can't cleanly kill the Jadar or the Braids anymore, because they'll get back a copy of it. Interesting. How do we want to block here? So, I think we'll definitely block both the Braids and the Jadar, even though they'll get copies. They'll get copies either way. I'm just, Let me think here. Yeah, this is tough because we kind of want to kill the Jadar and the Braids if we can, even though they'll get tokens, because then if we draw ways to remove them in future, they'll be cleanly killed. They won't get any more tokens off the Ratadrabic. I think we definitely want to block the Jadar here. And I like keeping the Devil around so that we start gaining... well, we gain more life off the Obnixilus pluses, which seems pretty important because the opponent is definitely trying to race us here. Okay, they make another token off the copied Jadar, and I assume they sack that to the Braids. I think we kind of have to sacrifice the token here, and I want to keep the Fable token around as a way to produce a treasure token so that we can keep producing Anvil tokens here. Okay, I think we're probably going to cycle away the Sokenzan. So another Obnixilus is actually pretty sick here because now we can create a 1-1 off the first Obnixilus and casualty in the second and start plussing that. I'm going to attack here with the Fable token because we want a treasure in play so that we can trigger the the Oni-Cult Anvil here. So I'm going to sacrifice the... I think I'm happy to sacrifice the token here because we want to have the 1-1 back on defense here ideally. And we've already got value off it. We've got the treasure token, which is what we needed to trigger the Anvil, which is the important thing here. Now I think I'm going to make another 1-1 here and just plus. So we go up to 8, and then I'm going to sacrifice the treasure to the Anvil here, drain them for 1 again, and now we're pretty close to winning at this point. Even though they definitely ahead on board, we're definitely winning the life total race now because of these Obnixilus. Wow, they attack with everything. Okay, so we'll definitely block the Jadar with the 1/1, and then we can kill it after combat. Although we could just kill... We could just kill the Ratadrabik here as well. Although, surely we're just winning next turn anyway, right? Because they've got nothing in hand. We're going to be dealing them 4 off the Obnixilus pluses. So surely we could just block, deal them 1 off the Obnixilus token, and then we're just winning next turn anyway. I guess this is more of a desperation attack from the opponent. We can just pick off the Jadar, and we deal them 1 off the Meat Hook. And then, yeah, we should just win next turn off the Obnixilus pluses. So, we'll just sacrifice the Obnixilus token here. And then, yeah, we should just win off the pluses here. Nice. Yeah, we got there. Okay, so we're going first here. And, yeah, I think this hand's fine. You know, we've got turn 1 and turn 2 plays and some interaction as well, which is nice. You know, we already have answers for Shieldred, which is pretty huge in a lot of matchups. Could be a bit of a risky keep if the opponent's on a control deck, but in the dark I think this is a fine keep. Okay, opponent leads on a swamp. I think we'll go swamp ourselves here rather than Sokenzan, because if we do keep drawing lands, there's a chance we might want to channel the Sokenzan instead of playing it as a land. Get the Harvester down on turn 2 here and see what the opponent does. Okay, so they're on white-black, so that could be straight white-black, probably Esper if I had to guess though. Shieldred's a very nice draw here, by the way, because now we have a good play to go next turn. Oh wow, they missed their 3rd land drop. Okay, that's pretty unfortunate for the opponent here. And we drew Fable. So typically, I really like slamming Fable as quickly as possible just to start getting value off it. But since the opponent's missing land drops, I think we just want to get Shieldred into play here and just start applying a lot of pressure. Wow, they got temporary lockdown. Okay, I mean, that's very good against us, but thankfully Shieldred survives it. And we can just slam the Fable here, and I think we're just going to start applying pressure. So temporary lockdown in the main deck does look like they're playing a control deck, I'd have to imagine, but since they missed their 3rd land drop and we were on the play, they're pretty far behind. Yeah, okay. So that was obviously unfortunate for the opponent there. If they'd hit their 3rd land on curve, that would have been a lot better. So since we saw temporary lockdown and Cruelty of Gix, I'm definitely going to bring in Invoke Despair here. You know, Invoke Despair is so good against temporary lockdown. Since they're main decking temporary lockdown, I think they're a control deck, so I'm going to bring in Obnixilus here. Going to trim on Voltage Surge. We definitely want Infernal Grasp because we need ways to kill Shieldred from the opponent's side, which I imagine they're probably going to bring in against us. And then I think we're happy to cut Braids and Blood Fountain. Now, typically when I'm boarding in Invoke Despair, I really like keeping in Blood Fountain because you really want to try and cast Invoke Despair on turn 4 if possible. Either off Fable of the Mirror Breaker on turn 3, because you can then attack with the 2/2, which creates a treasure token allowing you to cast Invoke Despair on turn 4, or by playing Deadly Dispute on turn 2 or 3. If you play Deadly Dispute on turn 2 or 3, it obviously ramps you, and then you can play Invoke Despair on turn 4. But the chances of you having a target to use Deadly Dispute on turn 2 or 3 is a lot lower if you cut Blood Fountain. But since the opponent is running temporary lockdown in the main, I imagine they're on more of a control deck. If they're running temporary lockdown, I think there's a very high chance they're also running stuff like Farewell in the sideboard as well. And so for that reason, I feel like it's important to bring in Obnixilus in this matchup. But typically, if I'm bringing in Invoke Despair against regular Esper midrange, I think it's important to keep in Blood Fountain so that you have higher chances of going Deadly Dispute into turn 4 Invoke Despair, basically. This hand, it's not great, it's pretty slow, but we have a lot of potential good draws, and absolute worst comes to worst, going... Oh wow, okay, Anvil's a great draw, but I was going to say, going turn 3 Brushstroke into Deadly Dispute or Obnix isn't the worst curve out, or we could just slab Obnix on turn 3, but since we've now drawn Anvil, you know, like I said, we've got a lot of good draws. We can go Anvil on 2, Brushstroke on 3, which is pretty nice, and then that will give us a token to casualty with Obnixilus the following turn, so yeah, this hand looks pretty decent to me now. So opponent on Rafine's Tower, so it does look like they were on Esper, they just didn't draw blue mana last game, unless they're just using it as triomes. So there definitely is an argument to playing Bloodtithe Harvester here in case you wanted to use it as removal, but you're almost certainly going to be sacrificing the blood token to Anvil to get that online. So I think it's better to be more mana efficient here, because if you're sacking the token, the blood token, you're probably not going to be using Bloodtithe Harvester as a removal spell anyway. So, okay, they have Mythic Massacre, which kills the Blood Artist, which is a bit annoying, but we have pretty good ways to recover from that, I think. So I definitely want a Casualty of Nyxus here. So I think I'm going to Deadly Dispute the Oni-Cult Anvil, which we do lose the Anvil, but I think since the opponent's running Temporary Lockdown, and like I said, I have to imagine they're running Farewell as well, I much more value getting 2 copies of Nyxus in play than keeping that 1 copy of Anvil in play, especially now because we have a second Anvil in hand as well. So I'm going to Casualty the Nyxus here. I think I'm going to minus on the first one just so we have something on board to apply pressure. And then we'll just start plussing the other one. And it will, you know, they've got Mythic Massacre in play, so that could end up draining us for a little bit. There is definitely an argument to just plussing both of them, though. Okay, they have Lae'zel, which is kind of scary. We don't have a good answer to that. Obviously, we have Infernal Grasp, but single target removal is terrible against Lae'zel, so I'm going to lead just plussing both of these Nyxuses here just to see if they discard anything. And then I think we're probably just going to go Harvester, Anvil, and then use the blood token to cycle away one of these lands and get Anvil online. Now, I am glad that I did minus one of the Nyxuses to get a token in play, because I think it is important to have chump blockers for the Lae'zel here. I mean, we are at 29, but we want to defend these Nyxuses if they start attacking them with the Lae'zel. So like I said, we're just going to cycle away the blood token. I think we probably value the Forsaken Crossroads a bit more than the Swamp here. Oh, okay, Invoke Despair, that is perfect. So, you know, like I said, single target removal, not good against Lae'zel, because it can just blink itself in response. Oh, okay. Temporary Lockdown. Actually, hold on. Temporary Lockdown is pretty sick for us because well, it's not sick, but as in, like, it leads to a good play pattern if they don't play another creature here. Because if they pass back with just Lae'zel and Temporary Lockdown, we can Invoke Despair, which will force them to sack Lae'zel. Okay, it looks like we're going to get away with it then. We can discard the Crossroads. I want to keep Grasp here in case they have Shieldred. But now we should be able to Invoke Despair, make them sack Lae'zel, make them sack the Lockdown so we get back all of our stuff. And then that's going to be really sick. Unless they have Spell Pierce. We just got to hope they don't have Spell Pierce here. Oh, okay. Oh, wow, okay. That kind of sucks. So they specialise the Lae'zel and discard the Epicure, so they've got 2 tokens. So now we can't force them to sack the Lae'zel, which is kind of annoying, but we still get to force them to sack the Temporary Lockdown. I think I'm going to plus the Nyxus because we know we're going to be able to get back the Anvil here for sure. So we're going to have ways to protect it. So we'll Invoke Despair here. They're going to sack one of these 1/1 tokens, presumably. But we get to force them to sack the Temporary Lockdown, and we get to draw a card here, which is nice. Okay, Takenuma, that's not bad. Would have preferred to see a non-land, but... So I'm going to cycle away the Takenuma just to trigger the Anvil here so that we have chump blockers for the Lae'zel so that we can defend the Nyxus. Okay, another Harvest is not bad. And they're already down to 7 here, so assuming we can keep applying pressure with the Anvil and the Nyxus, I think we're in a good spot. Wow, okay, they drew a land as well, which is huge. So now they're forced to take 2 off the Nyxus. I guess they want to scry to ensure their next draw is good. But between Nyxus and Anvil, I think, you know, we've got a decent chance of draining them out here, especially if they attack, because now we can swing back with our Harvester. We put them down to 6 here. We can plus the Nyxus to put them down to 4. I think we'll lead on an attack first, just to see what they do. Okay, they block, makes sense. So we'll just plus the Nyxus, puts them down to 4. Then we can play the Harvester. And I think I'm going to sack the blood token just to discard an Infernal Grasp. You know, we still have an answer to Shieldred here, which is a way they could get back in the game. And I'd like digging a card deeper. We could have sacked the blood token to the Anvil, but this way we can just chump block the Lae'zel and then sack it in response to the Anvil here. And they need a pretty good draw. They need a way to gain life here, basically. Okay, sick. Okay, nice. I think this sounds pretty decent. You know, it's a bit unfortunate that we don't have an untapped black source so that we can go Epicure Anvil, but the scry off Crossroads could be useful to help us find a second black here, because finding a second black for Brushstroke will enable us to go Anvil into Brushstroke on 3, which is pretty nice. Oh, perfect, okay. So now we can go Anvil on turn 2 into Brushstroke on turn 3, which is a pretty nice curve out. Okay, opponent goes Sulphur Springs into Epic here, so it looks we're in a mirror match here. Kind of nice that their first land is a Sulphur Springs though, because that's going to end up dealing them a bit of damage in the first few turns. Okay, yeah, so definitely a mirror match. They play Anvil. I assume they sack the blood token here. Okay, so having Brushstroke here is huge. Brushstroke is really, really strong in the mirror match. You know, Blood Artist can win the game on its own. Okay, Harvest is an interesting draw here. There is potentially an argument to play Harvester first so that we can start activating it sooner, but we're almost certainly going to be using the Anvil to sack the blood token, which would mean you wouldn't really be able to use the Harvester as a removal spell straight away anyway, so I think it's probably better to be more mana efficient. Okay, the opponent does have a Brushstroke, so maybe it would have been better to play the Harvester, but we already have an Infernal Grasp in hand to deal with their Blood Artist, which you typically want to do straight away. Now, we could block here. I definitely don't want to block their Artifact token, because that would give them another token off Anvil without even having to use the activation. We could have blocked the Epicure there, but we would give them more triggers off the off the Blood Artist. If we wait until we use Infernal Grasp to trading off in combat, that's much better for us, because we're going to get triggers off our Blood Artist, but they won't get any triggers off theirs. So I'm going to kill their Blood Artist, because that is one of the most important cards in this matchup. If you can keep a Blood Artist in play and the opponent doesn't have one, you're really going to run away with the life point race. So definitely going to kill the opponents on sight here. Now that could be a bit sketchy if the opponent has a Shieldred maybe, but typically Anvil lists that I've seen aren't running many in the main deck, so that's a risk I'm willing to take. You know, we'll see if it pays off. I'm surprised they block there, because now we get some Blood Artist triggers and we get a replacement token off the Anvil without even needing to activate it. I guess they're worried that we're going to use the Anvil to make another token if they don't block it, but I'm pretty happy with that exchange. So we'll see what the opponent does here. We are a little light on resources in hand, which does make something like the Mythic Massacre quite scary, because if we overcommit to the board and they sweep, then they're right back in the game again, especially if it kills our Blood Artist. So I'm probably not going to commit too much to the board here if they don't do much themselves. But here is a really awkward spot for the opponent, because having Blood Artist in play basically negates their Anvil activations, because, you know, they're going to be draining us, but if they sacrifice their Anvil creature to do so, we're going to be draining them back. So it kind of just counteracts it, which is why the opponent didn't use Anvil there, I assume. So another land isn't great here. We are kind of bricking a little bit, so I'm going to lead by sacrificing a blood token, pitch away one of these lands, and hopefully draw something a little bit better. Plus it triggers Anvil again and Brushstroke. Okay, another Epicure is not ideal. I am going to play this one out, but, you know, even if we had another red, I don't think I would commit another Epicure to the board. I think I prefer pitching the Sulphur Springs there, by the way, because we now get a scry. Okay, Harvest is decent. I think I'm willing to keep that. And it looked like the opponent was missing lands last turn as well, which is obviously good for us. So I'm going to attack with both. If they double block, I'm pretty happy with that exchange, because we have a second Harvester on top of the deck. And we're going to be gaining a bunch of Blood Artist triggers here, so we should start swinging the life point race pretty quickly now. Okay, they did have Deadly Dispute. I'm kind of surprised they didn't use that last turn if they missed a land drop. I guess they wanted to chump and sack it, because Blood Artist does add up pretty quickly, so I guess they were potentially worried that we would be able to drain them out too fast if they didn't have a chump blocker back on defense, but missing a land drop is pretty huge in this matchup. Now this is a spot where I am kind of worried about Mythic Massacre. We are pretty weak, you know, they've got, what, 6 cards in hand, and we've only got 1, so that is a potential way they can just rebuy a bunch of tempo, but if they did, we'd still get a ton of Blood Artist triggers, so they'd be at quite a low life total. So either way, if they don't play Mythic Massacre, I think I'm still not going to overcommit to the board. If we can hold on to stuff to recover, like, I think the only real way... Okay, they have a Voltage Surge for the Blood Artist, but I think we're so far ahead on tempo here that the only thing we're really worried about is Mythic Massacre. So if they don't commit a ton of stuff to the board here... Okay, they do play their own Blood Tithe Harvester. Interesting. So, well, we'll see what else they do here before we make any decisions, but if they just pass doing this, I think I quite like killing their Harvester with mine, and then we can start attacking again. So we'll kill their Blood-Tide Harvester here and then just attack. You know, if they have their Harvester, they can just stonewall one of our creatures in combat. Oh, wow, they block the... I'm surprised they don't block the Epicure there, because we just get another token. I guess they don't want us to build up more tokens. And I think I'm happy to play another Harvester here, just in case they play another Brushstroke. But I don't want to play the Epicure, again, because I'm worried about Meathook Massacre here. Even though they're missing land drops, Meathook is a way for them to just get straight back into it. So I don't want to overcommit. Maybe it was a mistake to play the Harvester. Maybe we should have held on to that and played the Epicure instead. Okay, they did have the Meathook. But, I mean, we also don't want to give them time to find their own Meathook. And it does look like they're missing lands here as well, because if they'd hit their land, they could have played Meathook Massacre and then triggered Anvil afterwards. But since they're having to sacrifice the treasure to play the Meathook Massacre here, they're going to sacrifice their own token. I'm surprised they didn't sack the token to the Anvil in response to the Meathook there. That would have given them an extra point of drain, but... So here, I definitely think we can do better than Epicure. We just want something better to be able to refuel here. And, you know, they're already down to 7 after this, so I want to try and find something that's going to drain them for a bit more. Okay, sick. Second Anvil is perfect here. I definitely didn't want to activate the second blood token during their turn, because we can now use it during our turn to trigger the Anvil. Hopefully we draw something better here. Now we trigger the Anvil twice. Drain them for... Well, we don't drain them, but they take a damage off the Brushstroke. We draw another land. Maybe we should have waited until our turn and just activated a single blood token, because now... Ah, well, they have a Brushstroke of themselves. That's a good way to recover. Because now we don't have a way to trigger Anvils other than sacrificing the 1/1s we have in play already. So this is kind of scary, because even though we were pretty ahead on the life point race... Oh, perfect. I was going to say Blood Artist is going to swing things back pretty quickly, but... Now we got lucky and drew a removal spell for it. Things are looking a bit better for us. So we're going to attack with the 2 1/1s here. Okay, they block again. Them having Meathook Massacre is also kind of scary here, because even though they're not going to be gaining life off the Blood Artist, we're going to be taking one off each of their Anvil tokens that dies as well. I'm not going to play the Haunted Ridge out, because we have a lot of ways to loot. Oh, wow, okay. Xander's Wake is also kind of scary. We need to try and close this game out quickly, because they're probably going to be able to win the long game off the Xander's Wake here. Wow, they sacrifice Anvil, though. That's got to be good for us. But yeah, like I said, I kept the Haunted Ridge in hand here, because we have Blood Tokens and Fable that we can draw to loot this away. And we already have enough lands, I think, so... But yeah, the opponent having Xander's Wake is pretty scary here. Okay, and another Anvil, sure. I think we just need to try and close this game out, because like I said, if it goes long and they're able to stabilize, they're just going to get a ton of value off the Xander's Wake. So we just need to try and close this game out before they get a chance to do that. Okay, so they block here. Presumably they sack with the Anvil in response. Now they get a Xander's Wake trigger and a Massacre trigger. So we do get to put them down to 4 though. And then we can sacrifice one of our Anvil tokens to put them down, well, to create 2 more tokens. And I think I'm just going to pass the turn here. We've got Grasp up for any creatures that they do play. And, you know, again, I want to keep this ridge in case we draw another blood token generator or a Fable to loot away for something better. But we do have 4 tokens in play already. Oh wow, okay, Boneclad Necromancer, so... That does put 2 creatures in play, but... Hold on, let me think about this. I mean, we'll see if they play something else first or not, though. I guess they can sacrifice Anvil to its own effect, yeah. Okay, so... So they're at 5. If we kill the Boneclad Necromancer here... They get another Xander's Wake trigger, but that's whatever. We just want to see if we can beat them. Like, we'll attack, put them down to 3. Yeah, I think we have to kill the Necromancer here. We just need to keep attacking, because Xander's Wake gives them the inevitability if the game goes long. We just need to try and shut this game out as quickly as possible. Especially with Meathook putting us down to 3 here as well. And then I think we just want to attack with everything we can here. Wow, another land isn't great, but we can attack with all 4. Okay, they block with 2. We'll definitely sacrifice the one that is being blocked by the 2/2. We'll get 2 more tokens. And I'm just debating whether to sacrifice the other creatures. So we'll get in for 2 here. Puts them down to 2. I think we just sacrifice this other creature. This does give us 1 less creature to attack with next turn. But this basically means they have to gain life to stabilize here, because even if they get enough creatures into play off Xander's Wake or whatever, we can just sacrifice Anvil to deal them direct damage next turn. So they either need to kill our Anvils here or gain life somehow. Okay, so that gains them 1 life. I've set a stop during the opponent's turn here just so it doesn't give away that I don't have anything. I kind of want them to at least respect that I could have some interaction here. But yeah, 1 Anvil isn't good enough. They need either another way to gain life here. Yeah, they basically just need to put themselves... They need to put enough creatures to block all of our 1/1s and put themselves above 2. Yeah, okay, sweet. That was close though. So, mirror match here. I think we definitely want to bring in Infernal Grasp as an answer to the Shieldred, because I imagine they're going to be boarding it in if they don't have some in the main deck already. Invoke Despair is not normally a card I'm high on bringing in the mirror match, but it is an answer to Xander's Wake. And Xander's Wake is very good against us. So Braids is pretty terrible in the mirror because they're also going to be generating artifact tokens, so they can just sacrifice theirs in response. Obnixilis is really good in the mirror match as well. I kind of wish I had more Shieldred. I've been debating putting more in the deck because it's also good against aggro. Blood Fountain, I could see cutting some of. I'm just debating whether to bring in Invoke Despair. I like Meat Hook Massacre here as a way to recover, especially going second, but Invoke Despair seems pretty bad though, because they can just sack Sanguine Brushstroke, which isn't the worst getting rid of their Brushstrokes, but if they have a Brushstroke and a Xander's Wake, they can just sacrifice the Brushstroke instead, so it's not even a particularly good answer to Xander's Wake, really. So I think I'd like running it back like this and just see how it goes. Like, Xander's Wake is good if it goes really grindy, but you can often just beat that like we did last game by just racing them on life total. Okay, this hand's fine. You know, we can go Epicure and then just sacrifice the blood token to the Deadly Dispute. Okay, Brushstroke's great draw here, obviously. You know, that's one of the best cards in the matchup. So I'm going to lead on the Epicure here. Opponent leads on a Shambling Ghast, which is an issue because they can sacrifice the Shambling Ghast to kill the Blood Artist when we do play the Brushstroke. So I could potentially see... Okay, nice. So now we don't need to go Deadly Dispute. I'm happy to go Harvester instead here. And even though we do kind of want the Shambling Ghast to die before we play the Brushstroke, I'm not sure I want to give them a treasure this early, because it could, you know, it could ramp them into a Brushstroke themselves potentially. Okay, I mean looks like they're gonna sack the Shambling Ghast off the Deadly Dispute now anyway. Okay, yeah. So there is definitely an argument to potentially attacking with the Epicure. Try and force them to block with the Shambling Ghast, so they then can't use Shambling Ghast to kill the Blood Artist when we play the Brushstroke. But giving them a treasure this early in the game is a way that they could get really far ahead on tempo. Okay, so they Voltage Surge. That's fine, I think. Oh, Shieldred's a good draw here, but now we get to play Brushstroke and we don't have to worry about Shambling Ghast killing the Blood Artist, which is nice, and we can just attack him for 1 here. See what the opponent does. Oh wow, Sorin the Mirthless, interesting. Okay, they create a 2/3 with lifelink. That is kind of an issue, because if we can't kill that, that's going to start swinging the life race as well. I think I'm just interested in playing Shieldred here, because that's also going to kind of counteract their 2/3. And if they don't have an answer quickly, that is going to run away with the game. So, interesting spot here though, because hard to say who's ahead at this point, because they've got the 2/3 which kind of counteracts the Shieldred. They've also got a Sorin in play, but we have a Blood Artist and a Shieldred, which are both really strong in the matchup. So, plus if this Shieldred survives and we can Deadly Dispute, that's going to gain us a ton of life as well. So, oh wow, okay, they have a Shieldred of their own. So I think they're probably ahead as things stand. Thankfully the Shieldreds are going to be countering each other out, so we can go Deadly Dispute here and not have to worry about taking a ton of damage. So we're looking for Infernal Grasp here, really. We really want to kill their Shieldred. Okay. Don't find one. I think we probably have to fire off the second Deadly Dispute here as well. So the Shieldreds counter each other out. Deadly Dispute here. Thankfully it's tapping the Sulphurous Spring, so we're not going to take unnecessary damage off it. And we're also dealing them damage off the Brushstroke as well, which is going to add up. Okay, perfect. There's the Infernal Grasp. Now that's sick because we can take out their Shieldred and then attack the Sorin. Now they do have the Epicure to chump block. And we would kind of like to get Anvil in play, but just killing Shieldred is the big priority here for sure. Because if we have a Shieldred, if we have a Shieldred in play and they don't, that is gonna make a big difference, especially because we have Blood Artist in play as well. I think we just want to start applying pressure here. So we'll attack the Sorin. Presumably they attack with the Epicure. We can't really attack the Sorin with the Epicure because then they can just get a free block with the 2/3, which we definitely don't want to give them. We do get to drain them with the Blood Artist though, which is nice. Just trying to debate whether we go Epicure. I don't think we really want to save this treasure. We still have the Blood token in play to trigger Anvil next turn, so we don't have to worry about not having an artifact for that. And I think just getting more stuff in play, we just need to start applying pressure here, really. We don't want these 2/3s to start mattering, if that makes sense. Oh wow, they have another Shieldred. Okay, that is not ideal. Okay, so they attack with the 2/3. So them having that second Shieldred is really problematic, because I think we have a good chance of just closing this game out otherwise. So trying to think what the order. We definitely want to use these blood tokens to loot away one of these lands. I'm just thinking whether we want to scry on the Forsaken Crossroads first, or we could potentially just channel this Takanuma here to get back at Harvester. We already have 2 blood tokens in play, so I think I like going for that. We can get back the Harvester, and then that provides us a way to kill Shieldred next turn if they don't have a removal spell. And I assume they don't have a removal spell because they would have killed our Shieldred by now. Now they could have a Voltage Surge, which doesn't cleanly kill the Shieldred, but they could have used that last turn blocking with the Epicure, so definitely scry away a land here. But yeah, I like this play because it guarantees killing Shieldred next turn if they don't have a removal spell, whereas cycling away the blood tokens, you know, you could cycle away tons and keep drawing and still not find another Infernal Grasp, so we're kind of forcing the opponent to dig for removal here to stop us killing their Shieldred. But having said that, them having 2/2/3 flies is going to add up as well. So this is still a pretty close game, I think. Okay, they plus the Sorin. See what they hit, if they reveal it. But yeah, I assume they're just digging for Voltage Surge, or I have to imagine they're also running Infernal Grasp. Okay, they attack with the 2/3s. So that is going to undo a lot of the early damage that we've done. Oh, okay, they have their own Harvester here, so they don't... Oh wow, double Harvester, that is an issue. So now they have an answer to our Shieldred and our Blood Artist as well. I think we just have to kill their Shieldred, we don't really have an option here, but having 2 Anvils is helpful, but next turn they're just going to use Harvester to kill Blood Artist and then Harvester to kill Shieldred, which is an issue, because that is the main way we're leveraging our advantage. Now, because of that, it does mean that we can probably get away with attacking the Sorin here. I'm going to cycle away the blood tokens first just to see what we hit, but thankfully I think we can kill the Sorins here because they probably don't want to attack with the... Sorry, they probably don't want to block with the Harvesters here, because killing both our Blood Artist and our Shieldred is really important. Now, if they have an Infernal Grasp here or something, we're in really big trouble, but yeah, okay. So like I thought, they didn't block with the Harvesters, so we get to kill the Sorin, which is pretty important. And even though it's nice to get both Anvils in play here, I really like getting Fable into play because it allows us to get to the Reflection quicker, it allows us to ramp, and it will loot away, you know, if we did draw lands for the next turn, we can just loot them away with the Fable. And then, like I said, once it hits Reflection, if we draw our own Harvester, we can then start picking off their 2/3 tokens, which is really big, because that's the 2/3 tokens they have are really undoing a lot of the early damage that we've managed to do here. So yeah, like I thought, pick off the Blood Artist, pick off the Shieldred here. Which kind of sucks. Now we need to find some answers to these 2/3s. I mean, again, the opponent's kind of threat light as well, but the 2/3s they have in play are going to swing the life race a lot. Oh wow, okay, they have Mythic Massacre. So that is a really bad hit for us because now they can sweep our whole board. You know, At least before we had a decent chance of racing the 2/3s because we have stuff on board, but now we're in trouble here. I think we have to hope that Fable gets us towards something good. Now the card we're really hoping to see here is Blood-Tithe Harvester. If we can flip Fable into Reflection and start copying it with... yeah, start copying Harvester with Reflection, that is a way that we can just kill the 2/3s and be straight back in it. The fact the opponent has Meat Hook is also pretty scary here because that's also going to get in for chip damage. Now we're at a healthy life total now, but if we don't draw anything good soon, that's going to change pretty quickly. So we could use the Forsaken Crossroads to scry, but we're going to want to use the blood token to get Anvil online here anyway, so we might as well cycle it away. And we draw another land. Okay, not what we wanted to see. So yeah, that Meat Hook has really changed things here. Now, I think we were pretty even before, but now they're definitely ahead. But if they can't kill Reflection, you know, like I said, we've got Harvester as a good top deck. We've still got Epicure as a reasonable top deck that can produce more blood tokens to loot. And we've still got 2 Anvils, so we're not completely losing the race. You know, they're going to be swinging the life total by 4 each turn, but we could potentially swing it back by 2 at least because of the 2 Anvils if we're activating them both each turn. Okay, opponent Deadly Disputes. So they have a lot more resources than us, which is kind of scary. But thankfully we have much more life total available. So we'll see what else they do here, but if they don't play any other creatures, it's an interesting decision. Oh wow, okay, so we lose one of the Anvils here, which isn't great. I was going to say it's an interesting decision whether we attack or start using the Anvils to gain us a bit of life. I think we just have to try and attack and race here a little bit, but we definitely need help off the top of the deck here. Okay, they have another Deadly Dispute. So we are definitely behind here. But again, we do have a lot of pretty good top decks. Deadly Dispute of our own would be really nice. Shieldred would be really nice. Wow, they have another Braid. Okay. So this is not looking good at this point. Okay, another Fable's not bad. That will loot away this land. And we can potentially start copying Fable. It's, you know, we can start copying the 2/2s to create more treasure tokens. And then once the Reflection flips, we can potentially copy Reflection with Reflection and force a bunch of damage through that way. Is a potential line to win, maybe. And very importantly, we do get to loot away on the second chapter. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. Double Xander's Wake. So that is kind of scary. Okay, Extract the Truth. I mean, we're just happy to sack the Brushstroke at this point. We don't really care about the Brushstroke being in play anymore. Wow, and they don't attack with the 2/3s. Okay, that has to be good for us. So we're definitely going to cycle away the Haunted Ridge. I think we're probably going to cycle away the Epicure here as well. Oh, okay, Harvester, perfect. That is the card we wanted to see. Now we can play Harvester, and we can copy the Harvester with the Reflection, and we can kill one of their 2/3s, which is huge. Okay, that was really big. But they do get 2 Xander's Wakes triggers, so this is kind of problematic because we now need to find a way to force through a win, but they're going to be gaining a ton of extra creatures off the Xander's Wake, and we don't really have great ways to deal direct damage at the moment. Like, we can deal with their creatures, which is really important. Like, I'm so glad we can deal with these 2/3s with lifelink because it stops them swinging the ray so quickly. Definitely going to cycle away the Blood Token Edge to see if we can draw something better, but yeah, Blood-Tithe Harvester plus Reflection is sick, but it's not... oh, okay, another Harvest is nice. It's not particularly strong against Xander's Wake because they can just keep putting more creatures on board every single turn. So the way to win this now, I think we just need to find a way to force more direct damage through. Okay, they've got a Thieves Guild Enforcer. Interesting. Well, they obviously got that off the Xander's Wake. And if they have more creatures, they can probably start attacking with the 2/3 here. So, I mean, they probably know that we're going to kill the 2/3 off the Blood-Tithe Harvester next turn anyway. So, I think they're pretty incentivized to attack with the 2/3 here before it dies. Yeah, okay. So, we definitely want to kill the 2/3 here for sure. This is unfortunately going to give them 2 triggers off the Xander's Wake. So I'm going to loot the blood token away first just to see what we draw here. We only need 2 blood tokens to kill the 2/3, so we will kill the 2/3. And now since they get 2 triggers off the Xander's Wake only triggers once each turn. Now obviously since they have 2, they'll get 2 triggers, but because of that, that kind of incentivizes us to use another activation, but I don't want to risk losing Blood Tithe Harvester entirely, because if we activate one of them now and they have a removal spell for the other one, that shuts off our most powerful engine here. So I don't think I want to use another Harvester right now. I think it just makes us too vulnerable to a removal spell. I'm just trying to think whether we want to attack here. I mean, we do want to apply pressure because we're losing the long game against Xander's Wake, but I don't want to risk losing the Harvesters. And I also, you know, we're at a lower life total and the opponent has Meathook Massacre, so if we get greedy with an attack and the opponent has a lot of removal, they could very easily punish us with an attack on the the following turn. So this is a tough spot. I mean, thankfully we have the second reflection for next turn, so we could use Blood Tithe Harvester twice, or we could do the play I described earlier where we go to the opponent's end step, and then during their end step we keep copying reflection with reflection to build up a huge board of reflections and try and attack around what they do. But we know they've got at least 2 creatures off the Xander's Wake, so they're going to be able to commit a decent amount to the board, and they're at 9, which is pretty high. Wow, okay, Malakir Blood Priest. So that's bad. That puts us down to 5 and gains them, you know, they're back up to 11 now. So that was a good hit for them off the Xander's Wake for sure. So yeah, we're in a bit of trouble here. If it wasn't for that Meathook Massacre and us being at a low life total, I think the reflection copying reflection play is pretty appealing, but I mean, as things stand, we'd be able to make 6 copies, but we would need, assuming they don't have any other ways to gain life, we would need exactly 6 2/2s to get through to be able to win. So, and they're attacking here, you know, they're pressuring our life total as well. I mean, that as things stand, that probably looks like the best play though. Reflection, copy, reflection during their end step. But if they're attacking, we might not be able to wait until then, because they're putting us in a tough spot here where if we block, well, if we don't block, we're taking the damage, and if we do block, we're taking damage off the Meathook anyway. So even blocking like this puts us down to 3. So we really need to find a way to gain life. We need like a Shield Dread or Sanguine Brushstroke would be pretty sick. I mean, thankfully we do have the blood token to cycle here. We also can copy Blood Tithe Harvesters to make more blood tokens to cycle. Wow, okay, they have another creature here. So, okay, if we do pass the opponent's turn, will we survive to copy reflection with reflection? Probably not, right? If they attack with everything, we're taking 5 regardless. So I think we just need to cycle for something better. Oh, wait, okay. That is sick. That was a great draw. So, that was, yeah, okay. That was probably the perfect draw in that spot, to be honest. Because now we can actually start gaining life here, and we can start picking apart the opponent's board as well. Whereas before, if we kill their creatures, we're just dying to the Meathook Massacre. So, hold on, I've got to think here. So, I'm going to kill the biggest creatures first. So they do get the Xander's Wake triggers here, but we're also gaining life off the Blood Artist for both the Blood Tithe Harvester dying and their creature dying as well, which is pretty huge. So I think we also want to kill the Bonecloud Necromancer here. And there's actually a chance that we might be able to attack through, because since Meathook Massacre's been nerfed, they're not gaining any life off this, so hold on, let me just think. If we... 2... So I can... Hold on, I'm just trying to think out the possibilities in my head. We could take out the 2/2 and the 1/2 and then attack. They'll take 4 if we activate both Blood Tithe Harvesters, because we still have the blood token. Oh no, we can't cycle the blood tokens. Is this still enough though? They take 4 down to 3. We attack him with 2. That'll put him down to 1. Sorry, I'm just trying to work this out in my head. So I think we take out the 2/2 here. This puts them down to 5. And then we can take out the acquisitions expert here. That'll put them down to 3. And then we attack with the 2 1/1s. And then if they block, they take 1 off the Blood Artist anyway. And even if they don't, they're just dead to us cycling a blood token next turn. So they need ways to gain life here, basically. Even though they have creatures off Xander's Wake and Mythic Massacre, because we had the Blood Artist to gain us life, that's not going to be good enough. You know, if they kill the Blood Artist, they get drained for 1. If they gain life and then kill the Blood Artist, we can still just deal them 3 off sacrificing the blood tokens. Okay, nice. Okay, that was so close. We got there though.